Be the Talk, episode 255, featuring Jannell MacAulay. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Jannell MacAulay. Jannell, are you ready to talk?
I am ready to talk. Excited to be here.
Dr. Jannell MacAulay is a combat veteran, leader, and pioneer in the field of strategic health and human performance. Jannell builds high-performance mindsets across stressful populations in the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, the medical profession, and corporate America. And I've just got to say, Dr. MacAulay is also a top 10 finalist 2018 for the Maxwell Transformational Leadership Award, just announced maybe a month ago. So congratulations and welcome to the talk.
Well, thank you so much for the warm introduction, and I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Well, your talk is called How to Achieve High Performance Under Stress, and I love your quote in the talk, "Drive alone does not prepare you for sustained success. It only leads to burnout, basically. You've got a collection of roles, being the best mother, leader, pilot, military spouse that you could possibly be. And in the end, not in the end, but after trying to be the best you could be, you lost a lot of love for yourself, and a lot of energy, and you burned out, but then you recouped. And then we got to hear the talk. So please, Jannell, please take us behind the talk.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think many of us, and I'd like to think that my story can relate to a lot of people and what they struggle with, right? We all want to be the best at all the facets of our life and all the things that we do. And for me, that was being a mother and an academic and a pilot and a leader. And I had been equipped with what I thought were the necessary items to be successful as a professional, but also in life. And that was the proper training, right? And resourcing and all the information and education that I needed. And then the drive. And what I found was that it really is incomplete. And what we need for the sustainable path to high performance, that's really what I talk about now, is kind of a third resource. And really what that is command of our mindset. Mm-hmm. And I use the analogy of mindfulness being a resource for finding ourselves more in the present moment. And I kind of talk about it like our oxygen mask. Being around airplanes, flying airplanes my entire life, I always said it in my pre-briefs, right? You secure your oxygen mask before you do anything else for anyone else. And I never really equated that to my own life. And so that was kind of part of my journey. And once I realized that and the self-care piece, I really became able to sustain high performance in all aspects of my life.
Well, Jannell, first of all, congratulations and thank you for your service to the country. You really inspire me because you're in one of those professions where, for a lot of us, we can make mistakes, we can do that, and the consequences aren't always immediate or swift or life-threatening. But you're not in that in that situation when people who are in the defense industry or combat or anything like that, or even working with the populations that you're working with, the healthcare profession, whatever. It's like you make a mistake and it's not there isn't any margin there, and there are consequences, and yet we're still people and we're still humans out there. So this has particular relevance and fascination for me. A lot of Talk Universe knows I come from a not a military family, but a healthcare family. So there are some real bleed over to that. So what is your advice? And mindfulness is a big part of your talk. I would imagine that plays in. But what's your advice when you work for these populations, with these populations, and they have no margin and they're burned out and they're fried, or maybe they're in the middle of a malpractice lawsuit or some other kind of lawsuit, and there was zero margin of error, and unfortunately they made a slight error and there were consequences. What do you do? How can you rehabilitate the mindset of somebody that has to go back into that environment day after day after day?
Exactly. I think what it is really is it's a learned skill. You have to learn how to not be distracted, to be focused, to be present, because really when you're in a high stress situation, and this is kind of what I think surprises most people, is that stress is a perceived emotion. So we have a lot of control over how we perceive our stress, and we have more of a choice as to how we allow our situation to overwhelm us.
Okay, we need to unpack that. Stress. Yeah. Stress. That was not what I was expecting to hear. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Stress is a perceived emotion. So in my case, if I'm walking out to give a TED talk, or in my case, 20 years ago, a piano recital from memory for 90 minutes in front, all of these people or whatever, I don't do that anymore, but all kinds of different kinds of stress. It's a perceived emotion. So please unpack that for us a little bit.
Yes, exactly. So the way our mindsets work is you are telling yourself stories, right, about the situation you are about to come upon, right? Whether it's flying in an airplane and you're in the middle of an emergency situation, there's a story that goes on in your head that might say something like, I'm not equipped for this, or I don't, like this is overwhelming me in this moment. And most of the time, those stories and those thoughts are just thoughts, right? Like it may have nothing to really do with the situation that you're in. And I always use the example, and this is, there's a lot of people that do this in life or death, high pressure situations, to include the military, but at its even simplest form, take an elite athlete who's a basketball player who's going up for like the game winning free throw shot. If they walk up to that free throw line and think, this is the game winning shot, I have to, I have to get this today. Otherwise my team's going to lose and all this pressure's on me. That is the story they're telling themselves and bringing the stress into the situation. Versus if you walk up to the free throw line and you say, this is just like every other free throw. I'm going to do my best here right now in this moment to get the ball in the hoop. It takes away that stress and overwhelm. So it's how you're perceiving your environment, really. And we have a lot more control over it than we think we do. And I think mindfulness is a great skill to help us cope and bring awareness to each and every moment that we have in high pressure situations.
I would imagine the stories are a function of the lower mind, the automatic mind, the B mind. People talk about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and those for some of us, really for all of us, but I think some more than others, those are really deeply entrenched. So maybe that's the role of mindfulness, to help us overcome that and help us learn a new on-ramp to a new way of thinking. What can we do? I would imagine forgiveness, mindfulness, a little bit of self-care, but what do we do to strengthen the new tape, or the new playback, or the new tape in our head, the new story, and try to relegate and make the old default an option, and make a new on-ramp for the kinds of thinking and stories that you're presenting?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, there's a whole host of mindset techniques that you can use, but two of my favorite to share is, the first is mindfulness. And really, the way that I see mindfulness and the way that I teach it is it's mental push-ups for your brain, right? We don't question the need to exercise our bodies from a physical standpoint to be really good at everything we do. It's the same thing with our mind. We need to exercise our mind. And that's really what mindfulness is. It exercises and strengthens our attention system. And really, your attention system can be focused at whatever is going on right in front of you, but it can also be laser focused internally at those thoughts, feelings, emotions, and stories. So the more you train your attention system to focus outward, the less you're going to rely on those stories. So that's the first piece. And the thing with mindfulness is not, I'm in a stressful situation, let me practice my mindfulness. Where mindfulness comes in is that you've practiced it ahead of time, right? You've put in the work, you've put in some effort to strengthen those muscles so that when you're in high pressure situation, flying high in an aircraft in an emergency situation, or that basketball player, or just dealing with your kids than the stress of the morning commute, getting everyone out the door into school, right? You have a tool and a resource to help center yourself and focus in the moment. And then the second piece I really think is this idea of spending some quality time, and some of your other guests might have also touched on this, with this idea of purpose, with this idea of what guides you in life. Because if we don't know that about ourselves, I teach a lot on know yourself and lead yourself before you even attempt to lead others. And the reason why that's so important is if you don't know where you're starting, what you're personally grounded in, what is your life philosophy? What are your guiding principles? What are your values? If you don't know the answers to those questions, then what is really known as rules-based thinking, which are other people's thoughts, which are the stories that get into your head, they can start to persuade you and overwhelm you. And so that's my other, so mindfulness, doing the mental push-ups. And then the other piece is really understanding who you are, what direction you're headed in as an individual, and using that as a grounding mechanism. You know, when you first wake up in the morning, taking 2 deep breaths, kind of reciting your guiding principles and your direction for the day, setting intentions, can be a very powerful exercise so that you can avoid being drugged down by the stories and the overwhelm.
So I'm going to try to summarize that very quickly. Here, you're a military pilot, so this is a new checklist. Is all it is. What you just described to me, the mindfulness, all of that, it's just a new pre-check checklist before all the other checklists in your life. And it's the ultimate programming operating system for your brain that you fall back on as long as you work to maintain that programming checklist. Is that a fair way to say it?
That is a great way to say it.
All right. Well, I'm so happy. I feel like Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney and asking a good question, summarizing all of that from about 30 years ago. We've been talking to Dr. Jannell MacAulay, and her talk is called How to Achieve High Performance Under Stress. You can find out more in just a moment when I tell you, but right now we've got to go over in just a second for the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And it's time for the Blitz Round with Jannell MacAulay. I'm going to ask her a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Are you ready, Jannell?
I am ready.
Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
Apply.
All right, just like the rest of us. Awesome. Did you have nerves or were you in the zone or neither or both? Mindfulness or no mindfulness?
I was actually, I mean, there's a little bit, I talk about eustress, right? There's a little bit of stress and nerves that are good for you. So I'd like to think that I had some eustress, but no distress. So I actually was able to perform in the moment. It was a lot of fun.
Love it. And that's eustress is the EU stress, which is like a good stress, but it also could be eustress, pick yourself up. Stress, I suppose. It's awesome. So, are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
I'm a blender. Definitely.
How did that serve you?
That worked well. Although I will say for the TED Talk, I probably memorized a little bit more than I normally do, just because of the time constraint. But I did improvise there a few times.
Other than mindfulness, what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
I use this in my TED Talk as well. The 4 L's, right? Labor, laugh, learn, and love are the 4 L's each and every day. And so that's kind of where I focus, right? We all want to work hard, but don't forget to not enjoy the moment. And so the laughing, the loving, and the learning that went on in the TED Talk process as well. And
that I love that because that keeps us grounded. It keeps us human as well.
Exactly.
Powerful stuff. Were you a opener? Were you a closer? Or were you in between?
I was in between. Yeah, near the opening, but in between.
What advice do you have for other in-betweeners?
I would say, enjoy the opportunity and enjoy the experience. I think a lot of times people get wrapped up in wanting to make things perfect. And I even said it in my TED Talk. One of the lessons I had to learn during my burnout and my exhaustion phase was that, stop trying to be so perfect, because there's so much growth and learning within imperfection. And so I think that's important for all of us to kind of really understand in the process of everything from TED Talks to life.
Well, I love that, because it's the two mindsets. It's the certainty, I've got all the answers, judgment kind of mindset versus the curious, open mindset. And we obviously need a balance of both in life in given situations, but it in personal stuff helps to be curious and stay in a learning beginner's mind for sure. This is the cut for time question, Jannell. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
The most painful. I think, having to get your point across in 12 minutes is probably the hardest part, because you want to make sure that there's storytelling. For me, it was really important to me to have an academic spin to it, like actually teaching and learning something in the process. And so I think trying to harmonize all of those pieces was probably the most challenging part of the whole talk.
We've been enjoying the Blitz Round with Dr. Jannell MacAulay. Her talk is called How to Achieve Performance Under Stress. If you want to watch that talk, and I recommend that you do, go to BeTheTalk.com. That's our show notes page, and we will have a link to that talk. We will also have a link so that you can connect with Dr. Jannell on her website, JannellMacAulay.com. Let's spell that for everybody. Jannell, 2 N's, 2 L's, Jannell, MacAulay, MacAulay.com, JannellMacAulay.com. And we'll be back in just a moment for the 10-second final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with Dr. Jannell MacAulay. It is time for the final word of advice.
My final word of advice is stop just being physically present with those around you and really start to engage from the mental side. Be mentally aware of your surroundings and the connections and the other human beings that are around you. And that includes, connecting with yourself as well as those that are most important to you, whether you're a leader, whether you're a parent, whether you're a spouse. Don't forget to be mentally checked in to your life.
Jannell MacAulay, thank you so much for carving out time to come on the talk and share your amazing wisdom with Talk Universe today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.